There's no number on it. We're obviously away talking and have got some plans in place. If they come off, wonderful. If they don't, then we've got a fantastic player in this week in Todd Cantwell, who looks excellent in training. I think there's a lot of noise around one or two players out there, so there's lots of things growing arms and legs that are maybe not so true. All I'd say is we're busy in the background.
The 1 and 2 that you mentioned, is that Rankin and Raskin, and Whittaker?
It's not true that we've signed a pre-contract with anybody, so I can dispel that right now. He's obviously a player that we like. There's negotiations going on between the clubs, but they're not the only ones that we're speaking to.
And with regards to your squad, are you hoping to maybe not get rid, but move on a couple of players that are perhaps on the fringes?
No one's come to me yet unhappy. So as we stand now, the senior players will stay in. We've only really, until this week, had 18 players training. So it was nice this week that we get up to 20, because it's the first time I've probably had to leave 1 or 2 out of the squad tomorrow, which is a good place for us to be in. So I don't think we've got that many numbers that we can be moving players on right now.
We just spoke to Ryan Jack there. His contract is obviously up in the summer, as are a number of contracts. Is that a concern for you?
Not right now. Ryan Jack's playing really well. He's been in the team. We're on the same page. We'd had a brief conversation a couple of weeks ago, and for Ryan it's just being healthy and playing, because in the first part of the season he was probably doing neither. He wasn't healthy and he wasn't playing so much. Since I've come in, he's been a main part of the team. He's scored goals. I think he's played ever so well. And so at the moment everything's calm. I know that Ryan's probably eager and I'm eager to get his future sorted out sooner rather than later, but at the moment everything's fine.
You mentioned obviously Ryan's eager to sort things out. You've got Ryan Kent and Alfredo Morelos as well. It's quite unusual to have so many players coming out of contract and not kind of get deals agreed or decisions made. What is the thinking there?
I think it's the change of manager is a big part of that. I think obviously change of manager, it moves the goalpost for 1 or 2. They're not the only ones. There's Scott Arfield, Alan McGregor, Phil Orlando. There's quite a few players whose future's got to be sorted out one way or another, but at this moment in time, Rangers' season needed to be sorted out, and so we've gone on a good run of form. We've managed to get to a cup final, into the next round of the cup. It was a big week last week for us with the away game at Kilmarnock, so that's why these things have been put on the back burner, because I think that we needed to find our form as a football club again, and then the individual players within it, and then those situations will depend on health and form and where the club's going, the direction it's going in, I think. But certainly with the change of coach, there's always going to be slight differences. It's going to favour some players and maybe not favour others. So there's no malice reason why it's not been sorted out. That is the answer.
These guys will be in a position to speak to other clubs shortly. Does that in itself not become a distraction, because they obviously need to be selfish and think about their own futures?
I think everyone's situation is very individual, so I don't see anything in Alfredo, who's got 4 goals and 4 assists in his last 8 games, and Ryan Kent's been a really good performer for us. So if I look at those two and I look at Ryan Jack, they've been fine. And obviously with Davo and Phil, and they've been injured. Scott's been in and out of the team and had a good impact, and obviously Alan's playing as well. So I think each person you take individually, but there's no distraction at this moment in time.
Do you feel in your own mind you've got a good idea of which of these guys you want to hang on to and which you might look to move on, because you want to put your own imprint on the team and the squad? Definitely,
but I also want to see a little bit between now and the end of the season in 1 or 2 as well, and I think I know the ones I would like to stay, who I think can be important for us moving forward. Yeah.
Michael, can we ask about Yanis Hadji and John Soot? You said they might be back for this game. Are they going to be in the squad tomorrow?
Yanis, yes. John, not yet. I think John's obviously just needs a little bit more in terms of his rehab and fitness, and we're not in a rush in that position. I'm not saying we're in a rush up the pitch either, but it's been a year since Yanis has played a game, and it was a year last week. I think he did the injury, so I'm delighted to have him back. He looks really sharp. He's not ready to play 90 minutes, but to have Todd Cantwell and Yanis Hadji come back in the squad, I'm a really, really happy man.
How happy are you for him personally? Because obviously I think just when you came back you spoke about him being one of the players that you actually did keep in touch with in the Euro away from Ibrox.
Yeah, we're really close, and he's, at 24, 25, whatever he is, he's a very young man with his best days in front of him. he's quite a special young person as well, like around the building as a professional. As a kid, he's someone that we all love here at Rangers. To have him back is massive. You know, he's a player that's been missing for a year and would have been a big player for us. To have him and then Todd sign this week, and seeing them both out there, the way Todd's trained in his first 3 days, has made a big impression on everybody. So we feel in a really strong place with those two available to us.
What can having those two available to you, Michael, offer you that perhaps you didn't have?
Just variety, I think. It keeps the other managers that are playing against us guessing. Gives me a lot of variety. It certainly turns the dial up in terms of competition in those final third places. I have to say, I think Alfredo, Fashion and Ryan Kent and Malik joining them has been excellent. And so we've not had Antonio Kollac, who will be in the squad again tomorrow, so that's good. So if you think from last week, you get Antonio a little bit fitter and you get Todd and Yanis in the squad, it certainly makes us a stronger Rangers.
It's important to have Cholak back as well. You say give Alfredo that competition. He has been, obviously, as you said, 4 goals, 4 assists, playing well, but to give him extra competition could push them both on?
Definitely, I think that's what I want. I want the competition. We need a squad that can play 60 plus games in a season like we have done the last few years, and it'd be unrealistic to think people are going to be fit week in, week out through that season, and not just physically fit but mentally as well. Sometimes they mentally need a break, 1 or 2 players, and so having that competition. The great news is I believe Kamar Roof is not far from returning to training. It's now just a pain thing, so he's already been out working on his own. He's got some mobility in that shoulder, which is great. So all of a sudden we're starting to look like we've got numbers up the pitch and a lot of variety, and there's not a lot missing in the final third if they're all fit and happy.
Just finally from me, going back to the transfers, I know you said that there'd been no pre-contract sign, and when we're talking about Raskin, would you get anyone else you might be interested in? If you don't get it over the line over the next week, will you be revisiting these players in the summer as part of that long-term approach you talked about? You don't just want short-term gains.
There's a lot of players. The summer window's a much better window for us as a football club, for every football club I think. The winter window, everyone, if you're in the market for players, it seems like everyone knows you are. So obviously it makes people be a little bit stubborn. But without talking about those 2 players, because there's 3 or 4 more that we're speaking to, it's like if the deal's right now, we're going to get it done. If the deal's not right now, then we move to the summer, because in the summer, with the contract situation, it does open up space in the squad. You know, I just named a lot of players there in the final third, without naming the midfielders like Lundstrom, Kamara and Jack. Where are all these players playing? You know, it's a big squad, and I want the squad to be tight, not too big that it becomes difficult to manage. I like to have everyone knowing where they're fighting for their way in and everyone being keen. So let's see. I think with Todd, it took a long time because there was a lot of discussions between me and Todd and Ross and his representatives to make sure it was the right move for everyone. And I think we'll be proven over time that that's a very, really good acquisition for the club.
Michael, did you have a number of windows in mind when it came to rebuilding the squad? And does if you delay some of these incomes to the summer, does that affect that?
No, nothing affects it. I think with 17 league games to go, there's 3 league games this week. The league games are running out. In a minute, they'll spread right out when we get to the split, and it'll be 1 game a week. With Yanis coming back into the squad and Todd coming, we're quite heavy in the top end of the pitch. We seem to be healthy at the back end as well. Ridvan will come back in the coming weeks as well, and John Suter. So I'm quite pleased. Then I want to assess. I knew coming into the club that this window was there, but the club might have had targets that weren't necessarily fitting in some of my ideas and plans, and vice versa. The ones that I want might not be available now, but Todd was, and we've managed to get Todd in. And if we manage to get 1 or 2 of the other names you're mentioning, or 1 or 2 that you ain't got the scent on just yet, then that'll be great. If we don't, I think our squad's strong enough to go to the end of the season. So it's not like I'm going to be devastated come next week if we don't get another one in. We're all fully aligned, we're all on the same page. There's money there to spend, but it's there to be spent on the right ones.
Because re-energise is the word that you've used the last few weeks for the squad. How much has Todd helped with that this week, just in training?
Yeah, Todd and Yanis have helped that massively, because they're 2 number 10s that add a lot of variety. You start adding Ryan Kent, Sakala and Tillman to that, and then I get quite excited about how that might look. Antonio getting fit, and Glenn Kamara every week seems to be getting back to the Glenn Kamara I know. I think Ryan and John Lundstrom have been excellent. Scotty Arfield gives us that energy in goals off of the bench if we don't start him, or that energy in terms of what he gives us around the changing room and around the training ground. So I think in the final third positions I'm quite happy. If Kamar Roof does get through this rehab and next week is pain free and can return to the squad for Hearts or for Ross County, then I'll be absolutely delighted, because then I think we're in a really strong place. We're only waiting for Tom Lawrence then, and you got to be sat in my shoes and thinking, how is he fitting all those boys into an 11? That's a great place to be as a Rangers manager.
And when your post matches, you said that you've been happy with the results, perhaps not with the performances. Is that frustrating, or are you fairly happy with where you've got the team to just now?
Well, the results wise are good, and then you're hoping the performance will come off the back as we get the players back I just mentioned, and we had people like Todd, and that comes to the mix. I'm expecting performance to improve. It was interesting because the analyst said that the game against Kilmarnock's the most passes or the most possession Rangers have had this season. I wouldn't have thought that after the game, so it just shows you that we're not a million miles away. I lived in 3.5 years and we had to build. We're not at the start of that build now, we're a long way ahead, and I think people have got to remind themselves that it did take some time for the style to come out. And I think with each week we've played 6 out of 9 games since I come back away from Ibrox as well. So we've got 2 out of the next 3 at home, 3 out of the next 4 at home if you include the cup game. So I'm delighted that we're back home. The surface will be a good surface to play on, and I'm expecting us to put on some strong performances now.
You've given us a few updates on some of the injuries, but at the start of those 9 games you almost had like a complete team out, either long term or short term. Looking at where you are now, without intruding into people's personal medical histories too much, where are you with the squad now in terms of these 9 games? Have you got a lot more people coming back, or just on the cusp of it, or been any major developments with the longer term?
No, I've settled the back 4 down. The back 4 needed settling down. Like the centre half position this season. There's been too many changes due to injury. It unsettled the team. Certainly in Europe, I think. Borna was away with the World Cup. Ridvan's been injured. Adam Devine did fantastic. So Tav's probably been the mainstay of the back 4. But the last 5-6 games, the back 4 stayed the same. And I think we've seen a stronger defensive performance because of it. I've tried to calm down the midfield situation. So you're generally going to see 2 of Jack and Lundstrom and Kamara, 2 out of that 3. Malik or Scott Arfield, and then in the final third you rotate the 3 or 4 you got there. If you're looking at the injuries, Tom has still not got a date that Tom Lawrence will be back. He's back in individual training, but still got a long way to go because he's been out for a while, so a bit of a setback there. Suits has been training with the group, but I just feel he needs to pick up on his fitness. Halanda's long term, Davo's obviously out for the season. Ridvan will be back in the next 3 or 4 weeks, and now Yanis is back. Great news on Kamar that we decided not to go the surgical route and see how it healed, and Kamar's feeling better every day, so he's racing ahead and wants to train early part of next week. That might be just a bit of him wanting to do it, but if he can, great, because he'll be fit. Once he's fit to train, he can play. If he needs to wait a few more days, no problem. But we're sort of getting where I want us to be. You've always got 10% injured. In any football club, you should work off that 10%. I think when I maybe came in, it was probably the wrong 20%.
Michael, you said when you came in that perhaps I'd like to see Antonio and Alfredo, obviously playing together. Antonio's had his injuries. Keen to see that quite soon.
Hopefully, maybe next Wednesday. Something that's in my mind for next Wednesday.
I'll offer you something different than what you're trying just now, obviously. Yeah,
because we got a way of playing, but each player brings in their personality and just changes it a little bit, and I think the variety is important. And I think certainly in away games, if Rangers go with 2 up front against teams back 4, then that gives them something to think about. It's something that I think that could be interesting for us next Wednesday, because it's the only away game we've got in the next 4.
And just finally, in terms of the boys that you're trying to get in, you're saying you've got other options. At what stage do you turn around and say, right, we need to move to those other options, we can't be hanging around for these guys?
Oh no, And we're not, I know in the media, because things have been leaked on the other side, that 2 players are being spoken about. I wouldn't be surprised if it's different names or no one at all. I wouldn't be surprised anything that happens at this stage of the window. I think everyone waits towards the end because certainly the selling club, because they try and crank up what the fee and whatnot. I think that they're not the only 2 names we're speaking to. I think, I've spoke a lot today about the final third being quite loaded, so no one's really took the scent that I'm saying the other end of the pitch might be where we strengthen. So I'm looking for good players in every position. What we have to do is be happy with the deal that we're doing and the price that we're paying for the players. And if we're not, we just move to the next one. I think there's a lot of good players out there, and it's certainly not just those 2 players that are being mentioned a lot. I do like them, the club like them, we've been clear on that, but they play for somebody else, and if they don't want to sell, they don't want to sell.
Just on transfers, just a couple of quick questions. There's a suggestion that Rangers have went back in with a higher bid for Whittaker of almost £2 million, and is there any interest from the club in Jake Cooper of Millwall Centre?
I've not heard that we've gone in for that money. I wouldn't say that's true, so that's a rumour I can probably put to bed in terms of Whittaker. There's no movement on that from the last time we spoke, and obviously on Swansea's side they said the bid wasn't accepted and we'd made a bid, so let's not move anywhere on that. Nothing's changed. There's been no further communication between the 2 clubs. In terms of Jake Cooper, he's a boy that I knew. He was a boy that we had bid for, I think probably 3 years ago. And Millwall riding high at the moment and seem to be spending money, not selling players.
So is that no?
I wouldn't say it's no, I would just say that he's not on my radar right now.
Just quickly as well, you touched on Alfredo Morelos. Some people might be surprised at his stats. He's had 8 goal involvements since you returned. Are you excited about him edging closer to where we should be? You said at Kilmarnock he maybe didn't start well, but he turned into the Alfredo that we maybe knew from previous. How excited are you that he's getting up to speed?
He seems very happy, he seems very settled. I haven't sat and spoke to him about his personal situation right now, because I just feel that last week, I think with this group of players, they've been under pressure. Last week, if you imagine the semi-final, and then we play away at Kilmarnock and at St Johnstone, it was a week where we had to win 3 games. Is that the time where we're going to play our free-flowing best football? When then you put onto it that the pitches were heavy in different ways, and there was 120 minutes in the first game. I think if we're starting to play unbelievable football as well, people will be saying there is no problem around here. You won't be asking me about transfers because we'll have everything we need in-house. So the realism is last week there was a lot of pressure on the players, a lot of expectation. They dealt with it. I gave them a couple of days off this week to breathe. And then we've had 3 really good training days into this game, and I'm looking forward to this week. Every day Alfredo's training well, he's causing me no problems. He never ever did on a personal level. We've always got on really well. I think I'll discuss with him his situation maybe the middle of next week once the window's closed and see where he's at. But at the moment, so far so good. He's been our only number 9 because Fashion's predominantly played wide. And I think he's done a good job for the team. I prefer Alfredo when he's more involved in the game, not less. So I want to see him come in and having more touches on the ball, because I think when he does, he looks a better player. I don't like it when he's distant in the game.
To Millwall, there seems to be a lot of exports, Scottish exports specifically, leaving Scotland just now, and a lot of players coming in from foreign leagues. Is there particular challenges trying to recruit from other players in the division, or is that something you're not really taking into consideration for targets?
No, my only thing is, would they come in here and be a starter? And I'm not sure there's too many in Scotland that would. And then when you look at a player playing in another club, playing regularly, you're not going to get that player if he comes in here and gets 20 minutes here or there. So I think there's no issue with recruiting from other clubs in Scotland. I think there's been some really, really positive things for Scottish football in the last 2 years of players leaving our league and going and doing really, really well. Probably better than some players coming from the Premier League and playing in our league. Some of our players have gone and played abroad or gone and played down south and done well. So I think that's a good thing for the league. I think it promotes the league well, and it promotes young Scottish players well, and the work being done in the academies. I think we should all be pleased with that. In terms of here at Rangers, you always have to look and think, well, the fee that's being paid for a player, would he come here and start? So if we looked at our number 9 position, I don't know if there's a striker outside the best 2 clubs that's better than Cholak, Morelos and Kamar Roof or Fashion Sakala.